Welcome to this Wednesday, August 25th, 2021 special school board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. And Ms. Clemens, could you please lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Before we get started, we do have a couple of board members who will be joining virtually. First, we have Mr. Jeff Worley. Can you confirm that you are in a secure location and your reason for not being able to attend?
Travel, and I am in a secure location.
Okay. We also have Ms. Penny Blue. Can you please state that you are in a secure location and your reason for not being able to attend in person?
Hello, this is Penny Blue. I am in a secure location and I am traveling for business.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to let them in the meeting?
So moved. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
Item 3, approval of the agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, old business, additional mitigation strategies. Dr. Cobbs.
Okay, I'll go to the podium. I'll invite Ms. Rogers and Mr. Williams to come with me.
Good evening, members of the board. We want to just begin by thanking you for your time, and want to just begin by just looking back at where we were with August 9th, 2021, and want to go over what was passed during that board meeting. So the masking resolution voted on by the school board was universal masking is required for all pre-K-12 students, staff, and visitors in school buildings and on buses, regardless of vaccination status, exemption for religious or health issues with no documentation. Following that, the information that was sent out to families, the statement was universal masking is required for all pre-K-12 students, staff, and visitors in school buildings and on buses, regardless of vaccination status. Medical and religious exemptions will be honored. If a parent or guardian intends to exercise a medical or religious mask exemption for their child under the age of 18, please inform your school. Masks are available upon request. Oops, sorry. So we just want to show you that last year during the 2021 school year that universal masking was in place and mask exemptions were available. This year, however, you can notice there's a significant change. So in 2020-2021 school year, there were 15 students with a mask exemption. We are currently missing data from one school, but you can see it's a significant difference compared to the 1,225 students as of today that have a mask exemption. For our staff, last year we had one staff member. Again, we're missing data from one school. And currently on August 25th, we have 83 staff members with a mask exemption. Mr. Williams?
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
Going to try to give you some information as far as information on where we are at in our community currently. Currently in the community, we're at about a 19.2% positivity rate. And sorry for not advancing. The graphic is there. On the second graphic, the middle graphic there, you can see that we are currently in a high transmission rate. And that we've been in that high transmission rate since about July 25th, the last week of July. So if you see that line, the line there makes the turn around the end of July. So we've been in that the high transmission rate since the beginning of August. We currently, the rate right now is about 20 cases per day. That's the 7-day average that we have right now. Vaccination rates are still not changing too much from where they were at before. Vaccination rates are running between, for 12 to 15-year-olds, and I don't have that graphic for you up there. For the 12 to 15-year-olds, it's about 15.8%, 16 to 17-year-olds, 27%, 18 to 24-year-olds, 29%, again, 25 to 34, 28%, 35 to 44, 35%. So those are some of the vaccination rates that we currently have right now. The next slide. This is last year, okay? And I'm going to have to flip back and forth between the two slides. One of the things that I want to call to your attention here, this is the cumulative for last year. On the right-hand side, if you look at Franklin County High School, we had approximately 82 positives last year for the year. 82 students, 24 staff. Right? For the middle school and Giroux combined, there were 39 students and 16 staff. In the elementary world, there were 57 students and 67 staff. All right. So the next slide, this is since August the 1st. This is a cumulative for as where we're at right now. I'm going to be honest with you, this one is not accurate as it is. I'm going to give you some updates because this graph is accurate up until the end of last week, probably Thursday of last week. If you'll notice, the high school is sitting right there at 28 students. As of today, we have 43 students who are positive. And so that increase has happened since Sunday. We've processed that many positive cases since the weekend and the beginning of this week, which has been very time consuming. If you'll notice at the middle school Giroux level, right now we have 7 students and 3 staff. I'm sorry, let me go back. Middle school Giroux, we have 27 and 6 staff. That's current as of this afternoon. I'll repeat those, okay? Middle school Giroux, right now we have 27 students and 6 staff. All right. At the high school, there's 43 students and 4 staff. All right. Like I said, at Franklin County High School, we processed over 15 since last Friday. Today at the middle school alone, we processed 8 positive cases. Let's talk about quarantine for a few minutes. Quarantine has become a topic of maybe some confusion. Maybe some people folks were not aware of some of the rules of quarantine. So I just want to go over that with everybody right now, so we're on the same page. Reducing quarantine. Quarantine, when we get into a situation, you have a positive student, we have to contact trace. And what we're doing at that point in time, we're trying to identify any individuals who are within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes of time over a 24-hour period. All right? Again, within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes of time over a 24-hour period to the positive. All right? In order to complete those contact tracings, what we've done in the schools, we've implemented seating charts. We've asked bus drivers to also have seating charts. On the buses, we're also implementing the use of video to try to identify students. there are ways to be exempt from being quarantined. They're very far and few. Let me talk to you about what they are. If a person has been positive, and they have been positive within the last 90 days, they do not have to quarantine. All right? If you are vaccinated and you are found to be exposed, meaning that you are within close contact for longer than 15 minutes, and you're vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine. This year, there's a new exception, and if you'll go, I think there's a handout, and I think even in the audience, there's a handout. I'm going to see if I can explain this one to you as well. Yes. Oh, we can right there. Tim, can you pull up that infographic? So you start off and you have a student who tests positive, right? Contact tracing then it takes place. It is done to determine who was within 6 feet of the person who tested positive for 15 minutes or longer. From there, if the student who was positive, and this is the new exemption according to the CDC this year, if a student who tested positive and the student who was within 3 to 6 feet were wearing masks consistently and correctly, the students who were exposed do not have to quarantine. Right. So both the positive and the person who is determined to be within close contact within 3 to 6 feet would be exempt from quarantine if they're both wearing masks consistently correctly. Let's go to the next one. No mask. The person who is positive is not wearing a mask, but the person who is wearing a mask and they're found to be within 6 feet, they would have to quarantine. All right? No mask if the student who was positive is masked, but the student who was within the 6 feet and not wearing a mask, they would have to quarantine. Vaccinated. If students are vaccinated, they are not required to quarantine when exposed to a student who tests positive. Okay, so we know that we do not have a high number. We have some students who are vaccinated, but we do not know the specific number. And we cannot ask our students until we get into a contact tracing situation whether or not they're vaccinated. All right. Now, the exemptions that you see here for the mask to mask do not apply to adults or staff. It only applies to students. The explanation that I received from that is that that students are less likely to transmit than adults are. Again, that was the explanation that I was given and the reasoning why it applies to students and not to adults.
Is that
Questions for quarantine, because I know you've got them.
all students? What if a student is over the age of 18? They're an adult.
We're still going to consider them a student if they're on school grounds.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I have some questions, but
Okay.
I'm going to wait till you finish. Just
Okay.
finish your presentation.
So, Mr. Williams, really quick, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, could I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Just looking at this, masking would at least help with the quarantine status of a large amount of our kids, correct?
It would. Right now, we have well over 600 students who are in quarantine just from the high school, middle school level.
Right.
So
Who are not
that's-
in school and are not learning in school.
Who are not in seats at school. They are able to access through
Right. They're not in
Canvas.
person.
They're not in person, that's correct.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, so those 600-plus students in the middle and high school, for us to do contact tracing on them, I'm guessing the decision tree that is outlined is you know, as you just said, were they within 6 feet? Then somebody has to say, was the other person with a mask? And who is making phone calls for 600 students? And I'm guessing it's going to be administrators. And how much time are our administrators spending doing bureaucratic checking of tracing versus what they're supposed to be doing around education?
You want to respond to that one?
Yes. I'd like to respond to that. Good afternoon, board. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to start from the beginning, what I was going to say. None of us asked for this hard virus. It's impacting all of our lives in a negative way. And along with positive cases, quarantining seems to be the issue. Students are missing in-person instruction as well as extracurricular activities. Students already have had 18 months of learning disruptions. This cumulative effect is not good. It doesn't only have an impact on our students, but the process to identify those who need to quarantine, better known as contact tracing, is taking all hands on deck, especially at the secondary level, to accomplish this daily. And I'm going to give you an example. Today, Mr. Williams, myself, Ms. Rogers, we went to the high school. Mr. Terry, Mr. Morrison, Ms. Lynch, and Ms. Muse went to the middle school, and one of our secretaries went to lend a hand. Our administrators, we have wonderful, accomplished school leaders, and they want to do it, but we said, you cannot do all this by yourself. We're coming. Use us in a way to help you. And I must say, and this is from my heart, and I know we all want the best for our students. That's why we're all here. You're here, we're here, because we want the best for our students. When I see accomplished school leaders, and we have accomplished school leaders, when I see our students and families struggling, that tells me we are not in a good place as a school division. When I see our students upset because they have to quarantine for various reasons, and when I see our teachers and our cafeteria workers and all of our essential personnel struggling, I'm wondering what we can do differently to help us get through this. And I'm not a medical official. I have not one lick of medical experience. So I'm only talking about what I've read, like you all do. My understanding with the Delta variant is it comes in like a tornado. It stays for a little while and then it moves on. I think that's what we're seeing right now. And what we have to remember about our secondary students, not so much our elementary, we have pockets at our elementary, but what we know about our secondary students and what I love about them is they thrive and interact in their community. They have jobs, they have social lives. At the ball game Friday night, I love sports. If you know anything, I was right there with them, sitting at the top in the stadium. They were, and I'm going to be honest, I was so happy to see them interact with their friends. They were so happy. However, I think today, some of that interaction, but they're still young people, and they want to interact with their friends. So I hope I answered your question, Mr. Achu, is that it has taken a tremendous amount of time, to the point that Ms. Rogers and I talked, and we said to our principals, the only thing we want you to worry about now is to take some stress off of them. You must write your SMART goals and your school plan. But other than that, of course, we have to do all of our IEP, RTI, all of those types of meetings to support our students. But we said, Don't worry about anything else. We won't participate in any book studies or anything right now if that will take a stressor off of you. So I hope that I answered your question.
Yes, and just thank you to you and everybody else that went over to the high school and the middle school to help with that process, because I know it needs to get done.
Yes, it does.
And another question, with those 600 kids that are out, what's happening now in terms of, are they all receiving some sort of virtual learning?
The students can access their instruction through Canvas. It's not live instruction. So we're providing, it is asynchronous learning, and there are instructional support teams at each school so that teachers or whomever is in this instructional support will have a meaningful interaction with those quarantined students each day. We can't put the burden back on our teachers to do both. So we are using our ESSER's money to pay teachers after school hours, but that's voluntary. And even though we're paying one, we can't expect them to do it. So schools have come up with a plan. They are doing a meaningful interaction, but it is not in-person live instruction.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Blue.
When Mr. Williams was up, he gave some numbers, and he mentioned the Giroux Center had 27 cases for students and 6 for staff, but he didn't talk about the rest of the middle school. What are the numbers for the rest of the middle school?
I combined that middle school campus, I combined Giroux and the middle school together in that number, Ms. Blue. So it's
So
20.
it was middle school and Giroux?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Williams, so it appears that our problem areas are middle school and high school, correct? The real problem.
That's where the majority of the time, we have positives. I mean, if you can, on the graphic, it showed we do have issues at the elementary level, but not to the extent of what we're seeing at the middle school, high school.
Okay. And are we in trouble with staff right now?
Staffing, so far, we've been fairly good. Let me talk to you about some of the things that we've been employing with staff, trying to encourage them. One, we have a higher percentage of them who are masking, but also encouraging safe zones, or trying to stay at an area where you're not as in close contact with your students. This is my opinion, at the high school, I think that's probably easier to accomplish than it is at the elementary level. I think at the elementary level, you have more close interaction with your students. I just think that's a natural thing that happens at the elementary level. So, but to answer your question, our staffing right now is reasonably low. 5 staff out in the elementary level, 6 in the Giroux level, and 4 at the high school, and that's, again, since the beginning of school year. But I do recall, I've heard of, I believe, 2 additional ones this afternoon.
Okay. So we could add back some mitigations that we did last year that we're not doing now, correct?
Yes, so, yeah.
And you're planning to talk about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll hear what you have to say first.
All right.
And I have one other question before you move on. When you talk about staffing, if you don't mind.
Okay.
We don't usually consider bus drivers part of the staff, but they really are, because they get us to and from school. And my understanding is that we are having issues with regard to bus drivers wanting to be on the bus with children unmasked, and that we had a problem, what was it, last week or so, one evening with a large number of bus drivers. Is that correct?
Well, we're typically having an issue with just the staffing on bus drivers right now on a daily basis. We have some open routes, and we also have some folks who are what I call experiencing life. I mean, you have doctor's appointments, you have sick children, you get sick. And on that side, our staff on the driver's side, we have had a couple of folks who are also positive. So it's not something that exempts that group of individuals as well.
So, so is it correct that about between, I forgot the number, between 13 and 20 called in one Friday or one day in the evening, and we were short?
We had to cover that many routes. I believe it was last Friday.
Yeah.
Was it?
Is that typical? I mean, is that a norm to have 13?
It's not a norm. It's not a
to
norm
call in on a Friday?
It's not a norm to have that many, but we did have that many last Friday. And again, it's a variety of reasons. I mean, you got everything from, again, like I said, life to just different things going on. But it's not a typical call out on a Friday issue.
Well, what?
And the number of students that we are having ill and sick at this time in the school year, would you consider that abnormal?
Not sure if I can answer that question. We have a high number that have had to be out. I mean, we can see that in the numbers. We have 43 positives at the high school and again 27 at the middle school level. So I mean, that is a high number of students who are out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Greer, I think you had a question.
Yeah, but speaking to the bus drivers, I mean, all along I have said, having experienced that myself, if I had to drive a bus right now in the humid weather with glasses,
Yeah.
it's a safety hazard for those drivers because their glasses fog up. So, and they're driving, their back is to the students.
Yeah.
And so, that's an issue that I can address because I've been there.
Yes.
Mr. G,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of questions. One thing, for context purposes, I'm not sure that we're being fair when we compare the start of the school year to last year because we weren't 100% in-person learning last year.
You're correct. There's some variables there. I
Yeah.
mean, last
So-
year we had some, we're AB schedule. We came
Right.
back full-time in late
We did a lot
January,
of stuff.
February. Yeah, we did. It's been a lot. It's been a road well-traveled, it seems to be.
It has. I was sitting here trying to remember when we actually went back into a full in-person 5
the
days
last
a
9
week.
weeks.
Okay, so the last 9 weeks. So I wouldn't want us to maybe compare the last 9 weeks to what's happening now. And I just want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that we have 600 children that have tested positive?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We have 600 people that have been exposed, and you are doing the contact tracing. And as you do that, you will know who has to be quarantined and who has not.
Yes, as a result of the positive cases that we have and contact tracing, with the combination of the students who are positive and out for 10 days and the students who are identified as being exposed, those are the students who are out.
So I'm understanding that the 600 are actually quarantined. The 600
Yes.
number are actual quarantine
Yes.
numbers, not looking at them. They're actually.
They're actually out. They're identified.
That's what I wanted to know.
Their parents have been contacted by phone, and they are out for a 10-day quarantine. They'll-
That's what I thought you were asking, Ms. Cosmato. I wanted
Let me
to
explain
clarify.
one other thing real quick, just so in quarantine is 10 days. It can be reduced by 2 days if they produce a negative test on or after the 5th day after their last exposure, okay? So we have a lot of students who take advantage of the ability to come back on the 8th day as opposed to the 10th day. And that's not outlined on that visual.
Well, and that's where I'm having a little trouble with it. So what you're saying is there are 600 children quarantined that have not been vaccinated. Because it says here that children that are vaccinated don't have to be quarantined.
That's correct.
So these 600 children, we know for sure are not vaccinated. Is that what you're saying?
We ask that during our contact tracing, yes. We ask their parents.
So just to put a fine point on this for clarity, today is the 11th day of school. We have over 600 students not being able to attend school in person. That's 10% of our student population is at home on day 11.
And if I could, Madam Chair, I'd like to also make a point. I
Okay.
know it said we didn't want to compare, let's say, apples and oranges because we were doing other things last year. That's the part of the whole point, is that we were doing other things last year, and we're not doing some of those things this year, which is why the numbers are what they are.
And another thing, I mean, my daughter has been fully vaccinated for a while and wears her mask and does everything right. I had to go and pick her up today to go on quarantine because she was exposed to 4 different COVID-positive students, some at lunch with no masks on, and her anxiety had ratcheted through the roof until she couldn't concentrate. They did offer her the option of doing quarantine, and she had no choice but to say yes because she just can't learn like this. She is doing everything right and is being punished.
So, Madam Chair,
I'm not sure I follow that.
I'm not sure. She was exposed where the students masked, they were not masked, and yet she was asked.
She was vaccinated.
Okay, but I understood that even if they're vaccinated and they're exposed to a student who's unmasked, they still have to quarantine.
No.
But she was exposed 4 times, you said.
With 4 different students.
Chair. Yeah.
4 different students.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, okay.
If a student is vaccinated, they do not have to quarantine.
I'm sorry.
If a student is vaccinated, they do not have to quarantine.
If they're exposed to an unmasked student.
If they are exposed and they're vaccinated, masked or unmasked, they do not have to quarantine.
Then why is her daughter
I-
in quarantine?
She has got such anxiety that she can't concentrate, and they did offer her the option because she just cannot function
Okay.
like that. And I guess that brings up another point, is if we continue down this road and we keep having this many students out, it's like it's multiplying every day, is there a danger of us going virtual? And can we avoid that? Because I know nobody likes none of us like masks. No one likes masks. I like virtual even less. I like virtual even.
I'm going to
like it
be
even
honest
less.
with
So,
you. I'm going to do everything in my power to avoid going
Okay.
virtual.
Okay.
It does not, virtual does, maybe for a low percentage. Our students need in-person instruction, number
Absolutely.
one. Number two, Senate Bill 1303 tells us that we will provide 5 days of in-person instruction. If we get to the point where we need to go virtual, then that means that we have worked closely with the Virginia Department of the VDH, and we also I have to talk to Dr. Lane because they are very serious about schools staying open, and that is certainly, I know it's everyone's goal for our schools to stay open.
That's absolutely the goal.
Right,
Yes.
that's our goal.
So, Madam Chair, can we hear
Yes.
what? Okay,
What are your
what the recommendation
Yes,
is?
Dr. Krause
Well,
is
let me
getting
talk
into
through
that.
Of course, my primary responsibility as the superintendent is maintaining a safe learning environment, keeping schools open, teaching and learning. Okay. And what we know is teaching and learning is hard without the first two. So now I'm going to talk about those mitigation strategies. When masking and 6 feet social distancing is not possible, layered mitigation is recommended. We've increased cleaning and sanitizing, as well as you all know. We have the air purifiers in classes. we want to core holding equitably, core holding. Can't say core hoarding. Thank you. Can't say my words. Don't put that on the news. Don't put that on the news. Sanitizing between classes. Stagger or minimize use of community spaces such as cafeteria auditoriums. We do know today, Mr. Crutchfield, at the high school, the students are eating in their classrooms again. And I'll be honest, it's best for now, but I do hate it for our teachers and our students because they do like socializing at lunchtime with their peers. Limited assemblies and other school gatherings during high transmission periods. Safe zones, trifolds or face shields. Limited non-essential adult interaction like large faculty meetings, large trainings. We've tried to limit those. And we want to prioritize education over extracurricular activities. That means that we have, in some certain instances, paused some of our athletic events, clubs, and so on. So with those, I do
Dr.
want.
Cobbs.
Yes, ma'am.
How does this differ from what we were doing last year? It looks to me like it's the same mitigation strategies.
It is some of the same. It is. You're right.
And I wasn't aware that we had stopped doing any of these. I believe at the meetings that we had prior, Mr. Williams said that we were continuing to do all the mitigations, so.
Well, we're thinking about the larger.
What has changed?
Thinking about, we were having faculty meetings or some of those larger activities. We were having athletic events. We had not paused until we saw the increase in the numbers. But
also, the trifold shields and the face shields, they were two kind of unpopular items.
they were very unpopular.
We eliminated those before the end of the school year and have not brought those back. So they would be two items that if we decided to use those, we'd have to give Dr. Cobb permission to bring those back.
I knew we took the shields
Right.
down, but I didn't know when. Thanks.
I do
Yes.
have one question,
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Cobbs.
Yes.
I wasn't in favor of this last year, doing the temperature checks, but did you all find that to be beneficial?
I don't think so, Mr. Williams. I just don't think we
Okay.
found,
All right.
we didn't really find that to be beneficial.
Okay.
But-
I have another question, and we may have to call Mr. Matty up for this, but
Okay.
I think that the SB 1303 was pretty specific that we are to follow CDC guidelines. So if we try to do things that are not CDC guidelines, are we then abridging the law? And the reason I ask that is because specifically the face shields, and Mr. Matty and I talked about this earlier, the CDC does not recommend face shields. So if we use those, we are not following CDC guidelines. Does that mean then that we are not following the law? Because the law says to the maximum extent practicable, we are to
Right.
follow CDC guidelines. And the CDC guidelines specifically say that they don't recommend the face shields. I'm
Well,
just
but also-
asking.
Yeah, but also we allowed an exemption for masking. And what Dr. Cobbs is presenting to us is saying that if people choose not to wear masks, which we're still not mandating that for, will they do other mitigating
Right.
strategies to help slow down the possibility of the
Right.
spread? Such as face shields, which may not be CDC approved,
Right.
but it is a mitigating strategy.
And I understand that. I'm just saying, do we get ourselves in jeopardy over this law that we have to follow if we do something that's not their guidelines? That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying, I think it's a great idea to use the face shields, but Mr. Matty, do we get ourselves in trouble? Because we spent 3 hours last time trying to figure out how we could do something that checked off all the boxes so we wouldn't get ourselves in trouble over SB 1303.
Hold
Can I
on,
ask a
hold on just a moment, Miss Blue.
Okay.
I think what you showed me states in there that the face shields are not recommended. And if I mean, the code incorporates, as she correctly stated, the CDC guidelines. So technically, you can't really use a shield. Now, will they come down here and
Probably not.
enforce that? I don't think so. I mean, you know, maybe it helps in some way, maybe it doesn't. The CDC doesn't feel that it does for whatever reason. I think maybe things can get up under it or come out from under it. It really protects the person wearing, I guess, from face splash, I guess. I'm not a scientist, but
Me
I would
either.
just, you know, that's common sense. But, you know, it's not recommended by the CDC, so technically, I guess you would, you know, it wouldn't be an appropriate mitigation strategy.
Well, it's not an appropriate substitution of a mask.
Right.
Correct. So,
Right.
but if we're allowing exemptions for masks, then this would be some type of something.
Well, the
rather-
law.
Rather than nothing.
Well, the law requires that we take exemptions if you know,
Yes.
through the Disabilities Act. If a person has a disability or a
Right.
medical condition that does not allow them to wear a mask, we have to allow them to come to school without a mask.
Right.
But the law does say, the CDC says, we have to work with that person with, through mitigation strategies, such as, you know, well, you can't really use a face shield, but, you know, maybe the trifold, social distancing, ventilation, other things that they have listed here. And if those people refuse, then I would be of the opinion that, you know, they would probably need to seek an alternative education, such as virtual or campus.
Mr. Matty, could we use those face shields as a reasonable accommodation? Would that cover us? Would that be considered a reasonable accommodation?
Well, I mean, again, the CDC says it's not.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm a little confused, and Mr. Manning, when you say the CDC, the recommendation, are we saying that the CDC is saying that they recommend that we not use trifolds? Or are they just not recommending that we use them?
No, that's face shields we're talking about, like.
No, but earlier we were also talking about trifolds.
No, trifolds are an acceptable mitigation strategy. I think the
Okay.
board, voted last year, if I'm correct, to take those down because they weren't very practical in the classroom.
Okay, so now we're just talking face shields.
Correct.
And we're saying that the CDC is saying that are they saying it's not a recommendation, or are they just not recommending it? Which one is it?
They say that it is not an acceptable form of mitigation for a maskless person.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matty.
Thank you.
So with all of that said, I do think it is reasonable for individuals with a mask exemption to be offered an accommodation in lieu of wearing a mask.
That's reasonable, yes, depending on what it is.
Well, it looks like it could be the trifolds or the social distancing. It was the shields, but I guess we can't use the shields. So that's where we are.
So this is what I'm sorry, Dr. Cobbs, you're saying this is what you've done, but what are you asking? Are you suggesting more?
Well,
Or
no,
what?
I think it is reasonable for individuals of mask exemptions to be offered accommodations in lieu of wearing a mask.
Right. I think the big thing was the motion that we passed last month.
GB, get closer to your mic.
Oh, sorry. You know, obviously, we were pretty excited about it because everybody voted for it. But we left it we just walked away from it right after that and didn't think about other things that may needed to be in place to help, these mitigating strategies. And I think it was pretty clear in the motion that passed that we really didn't leave any options for you to implement mitigating strategies. So you're bringing those to us, which were we used a lot, most of them we used last year. You're bringing them to us to get approval so that
Right.
you can use some mitigating strategies and still honor the motion that was passed last month.
Okay, I think that sounds reasonable. I
Madam
know-
Chair,
Yes.
I think when we voted last month on the masking policy, I was willing to try it to see if, people would be forthright with us about exemptions. And to me, it's pretty clear that they haven't. And I would have really liked to believe that people would have taken it a little more seriously than that. And I truly wanted to believe that people would have done the right thing had they no medical or religious exemption. And I think the numbers sort of bear out that that's not the case. And that being said, the stuff that Dr. Cobbs has presented to
down.
us.
You need to,
Get her out of here.
I'm sorry.
Accusing people of lying is not.
Could you see her out,
Madam
please,
Chair.
gentlemen? Mr. Wooldridge, officer.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Washburn, are you finished with your question? I mean, Mr. Worley?
No, what I was going to
Okay.
say then finally is, I didn't realize that we had to vote on these mitigation strategies if they were procedures that we had already had in place, or like Mrs. Cosmato said, she didn't realize we had not done them or had stopped doing them.
Right.
So that was my main question.
Your main question or your main comment?
Well, I guess comment then, whatever it may be. I mean, I didn't realize we had to vote on the mitigation strategies. I take the point about the face shields. I think that's fair. But the other things, I don't understand why we need to vote on them.
Well, I think we should vote to help the administration, give them guidance, and plus, if this is, we're not reversing the action we took last month. I think we're going to try our best to stick with the action that we passed last month and see if these mitigating strategies will help. If it gets horrible, we may have to look at it again, which I'm sure we probably will. But if not, if this reverses, the uptick in cases, then we've done something that's been beneficial and it's helped everybody. So I think we need to try this. I think.
Yeah, Madam, go ahead, John.
Before we get to any mitigation, I mean, it's clear to me, with 1,225 exemptions this year and 15 exemptions last year, something's going on. So when I look at, we're here at the 11th day of school, and we got 600 kids that are not in-person learning. We all want our kids here in the classroom. We all want our kids learning in person. We do not want virtual. We do not want AB. I don't want any of that. I want to stay in person. 20% of our current students we've exempted from wearing masks. 1 in 5. We also, in terms of vaccination, eligible students that are able to be vaccinated, we've only got 1 in 5. Those are pretty poor odds to have a kid in school to think that we're not going to run up these numbers. The Franklin County numbers right now are the same as they were in October of 2020. They're the same as they were in February of 2021. 20 per day in our county that our schools and community are inextricably commingling are getting sick. In Alabama and Arkansas, the ICU beds in hospitals are full. What do Alabama and Arkansas have in common with us? Low vaccine rates and aversion to masking. I do not want to turn into Alabama and Arkansas. We've heard how much time it takes to have these administrators do contact tracing. I look at the number of exemptions, and I think that last week or 2 weeks ago, PD made a good faith motion focusing on, trust and honesty and a compromise that would pass, and it did pass. I voted for it. 8 of us voted for it. It's clear now it is not working. It is not working. Therefore, I move that thorough documentation is required for all mask exemptions, including a doctor's authorization form for medical exemptions.
Before we move on this, can we get Mr. Maddie up to ask about the legality? Okay.
Well, first, before the motion.
We need to
goes-
put signs down because the people in the audience online cannot see.
Madam Chair, first, Mr. Atchu has introduced a motion that is not related to the agenda item
Right.
that we have on the agenda. Therefore, I don't think that it could even be a legal motion.
Point of order.
So, I feel that, I would like to enter a motion that we adopt.
Well, we've got the motion on the floor. We've got to,
Okay, well, it's a
Exactly.
motion, but I don't think it's not a legal
Could
motion.
we let could we let our attorney address
weigh
the
in?
reason that the motion, the motion he has made cannot happen as far as legal
That's
issues?
correct. If it's not on the agenda, you can't.
No, we can't. We can't.
It's a
What-
mitigation factor.
It's
What's on
Robert's
the-
Rules of
But
Order.
before we go there, Madam Chair, I would like to have some input too, please, and
Okay.
when you get a chance.
okay.
What?
I would like to, second, the motion. And I disagree that it's out of line of what is on the agenda, because on the agenda, we're talking about mitigation, additional mitigation items. Now, is it exactly what Dr. Cobbs has presented? No, but it's still mitigation strategies with regard to COVID. And I'm in total agreement with Mr. Atchu, is that I believe that people have taken advantage of what our intent was because of the numbers, and it is not fair for 600 children to be out of school because some folks have decided not to wear masks and et cetera. And even like your daughter is in school, but is the stress with regard to being in school around other people that are not wearing masks. We were in a meeting yesterday, and it happened to be with one of our senators. And I wrote down what he said. He says, yes, people have personal rights, but they don't get to exercise those personal rights if they're putting others in harm's way. And one of our primary responsibilities is safety for our children. And right now, we are putting large numbers of our children at risk, and we have too many children and staff in the school system that are not wearing masks. And that is totally not safe and unfair for the other people that are in the school system.
Madam
And I think it
Chair.
is on the
Okay, Mr. Maddie, I think you were getting ready to weigh in.
Well, I think Mr. Washburn is exactly correct. What's on the agenda is the mitigation strategies to be implemented. That's what's before the board, and not universal masking, which is, I believe, what you're asking for.
Which is a policy change instead of a
He was
procedure
asking
change.
for the documentation, which would go against the motion that we passed last month, which did
Right.
not require documentation.
But Ms.
So,
Madam
It's
Chair.
it's basically a policy change.
But
So-
but a
Madam
policy
Chair.
change to mitigate the issues we're talking about.
But
It's
we were talking
mitigation.
about, with the
Madam
mitigation,
Chair.
with the mitigation strategies, Mr. Atchu, we're talking about procedures instead of changing in policy. It's semantics, but it's an
You're just
important.
giving, the board's going to vote to give Dr. Cobbs and her administration.
She already has the power to do that.
The authority, well, there was some question about that. That's why it was brought before the board again tonight in a special meeting.
And Madam Chair, I have another comment or question when you get a chance, please.
Okay, let Mr. Maddie finish, please.
Okay,
So that's not before the board. The policy change is not before the board. It's just to give her the authority to mitigate or use mitigation strategies with the current policy that's already in place.
Madam
Okay,
Chair.
wait, Ms. Blue had the floor, and then we'll get to Ms. Cosmato. Yes, Ms. Blue?
Actually, what Ms. Atchu talked about was documented, information. We didn't put the policy in place. Dr. Cobb's, after the meeting, we didn't say, you had to send emails and et cetera, et cetera. That was done after our vote. So what Mr. Atchu is saying is not changing policy because it's not what there's in our policy. Can somebody read the exact policy that we have?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. This is a transcript from the last live stream of the meeting. The motion that passed unanimously was made by PD and seconded by GB. You can find it online at 1 hour, 55 minutes, and 30 seconds. The motion was to require masks for PK through 12 with exemptions for religious or health issues with no required documentation. Prior to the vote, Mr. Williams came forward and stated he had called VDH that day and verified that EO, that's Executive Order 79, stated those claiming an exemption did not have to provide documentation or a medical reason for claiming an exemption. He stated that should still be in effect. You can find that at 1 hour, 55 minutes, and 30 seconds. On further discussion of the motion, Mr. Worley actually made the comment that he remembered that that last year that we were not requiring medical documentation, and other school boards stated that this was basically the same policy that we were following at the end of the school year. There was no discussion of additional mitigation measures to be followed for those requesting exemptions. Mr. Maddie met with myself and Arlette before the meeting, and I just asked him, I said, you said that what we passed checked all the boxes. And let me just say that 7 different times, because I counted them, Penny Blue asked us to listen to our attorney's advice and do what our attorney said, because that's why we had an attorney. She said, follow the law, follow the law. Several board members said, follow the law, follow the law. Our attorney says that we have a policy that adheres to the law and will keep us out of a lawsuit. But Mr. Maddie, what did you tell me almost an hour ago? If we require documentation, what is your prediction that will happen?
I think it's contrary to the law. You can't ask for documentation.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Chair,
Yes.
the motion and second that's on the floor, is that, are we going to vote on that?
If it goes against the law, I don't see where we can't vote on it.
Okay,
Well, it's not on the agenda, so I think you have
Right.
to.
okay. So, Madam Chair, the motion I enter is for us to approve the mitigation strategies that Dr. Cobbs has presented to the board, and
Can you
hopefully,
mic closer to the mic,
and
please?
hopefully, those mitigation strategies will improve our situation.
And could I clarify that, please?
Yes.
I do think it is reasonable for individuals with a mask exemption to be offered accommodations. So certainly we want to mitigations for all of our students, but I'm talking about the students and the staff who have requested a mask exemption. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, they're entitled, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
They are entitled under the ADA for a reasonable accommodation.
Right.
And we talked about that earlier. And certainly, we don't want to just follow SB 1303. We want to follow the American
Right.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right.
But now I would like to have added to that motion that this policy will apply across the board consistently, because that was one of the problems. And,
We have found that
or
several different
challenges
schools
that
had
we ran
several
up
different kind of
against.
ways of looking at things. We need to make absolutely positive that what they're doing at Ferrum Elementary, they're doing out at Snow Creek and at Sontag and at Windy Gap and at the middle school and the high school. We need to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Everybody treated equally. And
Did you second his motion?
I did. Mr. Washburn, I
Madam Chair,
seconded your
I just
motion.
want one thing clarified. as far as the trifolds, this will be offered to any student, because
Oh, yes. Oh,
that may be a
yes.
mitigation that a
Yes.
parent who
Sure.
sends their child to school with a mask may want it also.
Oh,
Okay.
sure, that's, yes.
And are we going to have a call vote, please?
We could have a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want, Ms. Stockton, do you want the motion reread? Let's reread it just so everybody is clear.
A motion by Mr. Washburn and second by Ms. Cosmato. The board voted to approve mitigating strategies offered by Dr. Cobbs. This policy will require across-the-board consistency. And I will list the strategies. Ms. Greer,
Yes.
Ms. Blue,
I vote no, not because I don't think that these are good additional strategies. I'm voting no because I think the community and the parents have taken advantage of the vote that we had last time, and I don't believe that this is sufficient.
Mr. Atchu,
Yes.
Mr. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Cosmato,
Yes.
Mr. Hamrick,
Yes.
and Ms. Nix.
Yes,
7-1.
the vote passes.
Yes.
Madam
Thank you,
Chairman?
Dr. Hobbs.
Adjourn.
If I may just make a statement, I will uphold what the board voted. I do not think that the intent of the law is aligned with our actions. I think we're demonstrating to the community and our students to look for loopholes and to look for ways around things. And I don't support, I'll support the board, but I think this is a bad move.
Thank you.
Mr. Washburn, did you say?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. we have a-
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
Not many people in the audience have masks.
Oh, no, I noticed that. Right, that was one of my first things I saw.